I'd rather win than be prideful, you know?
Yeah.
And that humility it's a huge piece of it.
It made me think of that quote. Do you care more about being happy or being right?
Yeah.
And that's such a good one
And
to remember
sometimes
in
I'm like, I want to be right. Like, I'm mad at you. And,
what if being right makes me happy?
Totally. Yeah.
Rising Man family, I have a drop dead gorgeous bombshell of a babe in my podcast recording studio right now. My lovely wife of 7.5 years, Miss Kari Azuma. Love having you here, honey.
Thanks for having me, and thanks for the beautiful compliments.
Yeah, people hear about you all the time, and now they finally get to see your lovely face and hear your lovely voice again. This is the second time we've done this.
Oh, well,
it's been a while.
Hello, Rising Man community. It's good to be back. Yeah, it's been a while since before we had Itzy. So, yeah, it's good to be back here in this phase of our life.
Yeah, for those of you who don't know, my wife is a badass leadership and embodiment coach. She's focusing her work with women right now, taking all of the experiences that she's had and applying them to helping women, and whether they're mothers or women running businesses. She's just really taking the world by storm right now. And yeah, she's kicking ass. So I just wanted to say that so you all know just how awesome my wife is. But we were talking about it this week. A lot of people ask us and ask me, about my relationship with you. But rarely do we get an opportunity to really speak about that together and really discuss what it's like, what's going on, what have we learned, what have we gathered, and how can that be helpful? Because it's hard raising a family and having a marriage, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, we're always learning. It's funny because I feel like compared to our parents, we're like babies in marriage, but, around our friends, we're sort of the veterans. So I feel like it's been a nice, beautiful, long enough road for us to have, some experience to talk about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's been a really challenging last year. I mean, everyone has been really deep in it in the past couple of years with COVID and quarantines and pandemics and all the uncertainties. But I know we've seen more than a few parents and partners who are raising children together just go through it like we were. So
yeah, man, I think everyone's getting their parent chops through this whole experience, and they're, in all the different ways. I just bow to parents during this time.
So one of the things that I've spoken to and alluded to, but not really gone into depth with on the show, is when you and I created our family values of service, spirit, and growth. So
yes.
Why don't you tell the story through your lens? Because some people might have heard it from me already.
Yeah, I mean, I think we were just on a really sweet date. We were like, let's review, like, what are our values? I think this was at a time where we were looking at moving away from Santa Barbara. When we were living in Santa Barbara. We didn't know yet what fate held, that we would end up here in Santa Cruz and then so on and so forth. But we were kind of taking a review of where we were going to go next. And we realized, wow, we didn't really figure out where we're going until we know we're like really clear on these three things together. We've been married for a while. We haven't reviewed this for ourselves. And so, yeah, I think we sat down and we looked at like, who are you? Who am I? And who are we? And how do those things coalesce? And service, spirit, and growth just seem to be the fit all the way around. And it really has been the thing that even brought us together, really. Right? Because like we met through our friends, through the Burning Man community, through the coaching community. I mean, it kind of started off on this whole foot of like holding vision through leadership and through growth. And I think growth is actually one of the biggest pillars of how we've stayed married. And love, really. I mean, I feel like a lot of people have growth tools, but I really do feel like we are a couple of the lucky ones because our love has carried us through so deeply through all of those different trials. So I do feel like, we do the work, and I also feel like we got super blessed in this life with each other. So
before we go more into the story, a question came to my mind because I know how much we do love each other. And I have told people that what has gotten us through so much of the challenges we faced is how much we love each other. So I know we have that going for us, but do you think that the love that we have for each other alone would have carried us through those challenging times, or is it something else?
Definitely not. I always tell couples like love is never enough. I mean, it is a huge recipe, but it's really never enough. You have to, I think one of the best recipes of success for us, and I think I might have even said this on our last podcast together, is just that we always really want the other person to win. You know, it's like if I see you down or if I see you're not winning, it's just my whole body just is so misaligned with that reality. It's like, how can he feel good? How can he? It's like we always feel like we got the better end of the deal, you know? So by having each other. So there's just I think one of the biggest values we have that we didn't say out loud is commitment. And that's why we both teach leadership in our different ways. But I think the commitment we have to each other winning is probably one of the biggest recipes of like why we are still together and still thriving and, always working toward being better and all the things.
So John Lennon had it wrong. Love is not all you need. There's a couple other ingredients.
Well, we could get into a whole theoretical discussion. Like, yes, love can be there. I'm just talking about sustaining a marriage in this day and age when like many marriages fail. I think there has to be vision. There has got to be vision and love.
Yeah. I completely agree with you. Obviously, I'm just being silly.
It's okay. You're the host. You can poke.
I gotta banter a little bit. And, in addition to love, the things that we have going for us are communication, just an ability to really communicate and not just vibrate words on air, but to actually communicate with each other and speak what's going on and be honest and forthcoming about when and where we're challenged without compromising our individual truths, which is a very complicated and difficult thing to learn how to navigate. And I think that's what you're alluding to when you say these leadership tools and distinctions.
Yes, but I actually want to say something about that because I think when we met, this is one of the foundations on which our love and our relationship was born on. Because I remember telling my friends like, wow, this is the first person I've ever been with. Listen up, ladies and gentlemen, if you're looking for a partner. This is the first person I've ever been with where I can say anything about myself and I know it will be held. I know I won't be judged and I know that there's like a space for it to go. And it'll be just completely embraced. And so I felt like I didn't ever have to hide pieces or contort pieces or kind of like make pieces of myself look a little better for you. I always felt like, wow, this is someone I can literally just like trust fall back into. And I think that's what started the ability for us to be in that really clear and transparent communication. Yes, we also founded our relationship in an ontology of coaching, language group. So there was like, that's kind of where we met, was like studying ontology, which is actually like the study of language and being. So we had this common language also in like the coaching community that we used with each other, which was powerful. But the fact, like the spark of that came from just being like, wow, I can tell this person anything. And that's the part where I think it took us work, where we had been in relationships where we had contorted ourselves, where we had betrayed our truth in order to make something work because we were more committed to this word relationship than we were to ourselves. And we both met at this time where we were like, I love myself more. I'm not going to settle. And we came forthright with those truths together. You gave me your truth. I gave you mine. And it was unabashedly, transparent. So I think that truth was a theme that just was born from our commitment to release and be vulnerable and like jump off the freaking cliff,
And I want to add a layer onto that because there's plenty of times where I fall into judgment of you, where my ego gets triggered, and we have many many of those moments.
No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, well, it's important to be really clear because I know a lot of people who don't see the behind the scenes. It's easy for us to take that for granted, but there's many moments where my ego gets triggered, your little girl gets triggered, but it's a deeper level of trust that I always know that you're going to come back to the love and the commitment we have to each other.
Yes.
And I know that you always feel that for me too, that no matter how far I go, I've said some hurtful things, I've hurt your feelings more than once, and we've always found our way back to the place of love. And it's through the vehicle of humility and honesty and vulnerability and those words that mean a lot of different things to people, but it's the practice, it's the daily practice of always coming back. Always
humility for sure. I feel like we really we let pride take a back seat in our relationship a lot. Not that it doesn't come up. Oh boy, does it?
It sure does.
But I think humility is the biggest piece because there has to be a part of us that's like, sometimes we wait a day, sometimes we wait a few hours, sometimes it's a couple days, and one of us will come back and say, all right, like, this isn't working. Like I said something like, well, the biggest piece is really ownership, because I think we really like take ownership of what we're responsible for, which again, I think is a big part of our training and like our 10 years of coaching. But I also just think, also our examples in life, like I saw my parents always come back to each other. I was very lucky to have good models that way. And, I'd rather win than be prideful,
Yeah.
And that humility it's a huge piece of it.
It made me think of that quote. Do you care more about being happy or being right?
Yeah.
And that's such a good one
and
to remember.
And sometimes I'm like, I want to be right. Like, I'm mad at you. And
what if being right makes me happy?
Totally. Yeah. Oh, man. I was thinking about a conversation we were having the other night around 2 really big life events coming up, and one that you committed to, which I don't know if you want to share, but one that you committed to, and then a life event for our friends that I am so committed to being at, and how both of them were so important to us, and how I wanted to be right and just be like, how could you choose your thing over this thing? And you were probably like, how could you make me choose something that I've already committed to? I mean, we get into these things like heavy, guys. It's not always easy. And it's just happened the other night. But the way we worked through that was pretty awesome, because I definitely started off in my triggers, definitely wanted to be right, definitely wanted to make you wrong and have you just give in to what I wanted. And you were so patient with me, which I really appreciated. And, let that kind of play out, which sometimes women have to have that space, I think. But when I finally was able to see your side, it was like, okay, it was another moment where I was like, man, this is actually what I trust about this person, is that he has this commitment to this, this thing he really wants to do and he's called to. And I want to make that wrong in this moment for what I want. So there's always like those little things that come up. It's not like it's all perfect, and navigating that sometimes can take days. So,
yeah. And just to review that particular example, that's a really great and recent example for us of those things that inevitably come up in relationships, marriages, and really strong marriages where there is no easy solution. There's no easy answer. Whenever you're in a relationship with 2 separate people, I don't care about this like twin flames or we're one soul in 2 bodies type of thing. You're 2 separate people who, no matter what, at some point you're going to have different desires and conflicting desires. And sometimes those are really big things, like in this scenario for us. And for me personally, one of the things that came up was really reviewing this word commitment. People who listen to the podcast know that I love talking about commitment and talking about being more committed. But this particular example brought up a whole new meaning to that word for me. And I asked myself, what am I actually committed to? What am I committed to the degree that it's the way that I want to hold all of my commitments, that it's non-negotiable. It's not going to change. I'm not going to allow anything in my control to influence that commitment that I have. And the one above all commitments that I have is to our marriage. The vow, that promise that I made to you, all of the things that I said when we got married and the things that I heard you say to me. And I reviewed that, and I've never broken that commitment. I've broken some commitments. I've failed on some of my commitments. I've let the balls drop and let things fall off of my plate when I put the word commitment on them before. But that commitment I've never broken. And so it's given me a new reference point for how I hold commitment and what I give my word to and what I mean when I say that. And I think it's important for people who are in relationship. I think a lot of people go into marriage unknowingly and not really knowing what it takes to be committed to that degree. I know that I've learned a whole lot more about what it means. Part of it is what you pick up on the journey. But then there's also just having that awareness that, are you committing to this in a way that is non-negotiable? Are there conditions on the commitment of marriage and relationship?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, yeah, this is, it all makes sense. And I'm guessing like maybe some of the listeners also don't know sort of like the nitty gritty of those principles, like it's a good philosophy. But I have to say, like, to the men and women out there, like, it's not easy being married to a man who is so his word and so committed to the things he's committed to in life. Like, it's not easy. It's like, I think a lot of women I hear are like, I just want like a king who's like a leader and like, all these things. And, so sometimes I'll even hear some of my friends say someone like Jetty. And I'm like, Jetty's amazing. And I love being married to him. And he is a young prince. He is building a kingdom. He has a lot of commitments that he shows up for. And I like my journey of supporting him through those commitments has not always been easy. In fact, it's one of the things that we've gotten into a lot of really tough dynamics around. And that being said, one thing Jetty said to me the other night when we were arguing about his commitment was, he said, do you benefit in our marriage from the commitments I make to you? And I was like, oh, yeah, that's so true. Like it's not always easy saying like, yes, I'll cover you for this, or yes, okay, you have to do that. Okay, yes, I'll watch the kids again this time. Okay. And when he says, you will have this, I will be there when, and you can count on me for, I also get the result of that. But there's like a part of me that just wants to be, be really transparent with women that if you're going to date a leader or you want to date someone who's a king or any of those things, it's not like they're just going to bow and create all this beautiful kingdom for you without some sense of like how you have to hold that man. Like how you have to create that man. Our friend Mark Bass once said, a man usually gets married for two reasons. One, he wants a family and he can't do that alone. And the other is he has vision and he knows that he needs a woman to hold space for that vision, to hold him and challenge him to be in that vision. I definitely feel like it's both for Jetty. Like he wanted a family and that. Both. But I'll never forget what he said about that because it's true. I don't think that Jetty, I don't think I would be the woman I am had I not had to challenge and push myself to support someone so selflessly. And I don't think Jetty would be who he is if he didn't have me challenging him every step of the way and just having to contend with my challenges around what I have to face. I don't think he would be the same person either. So
yeah, I 100% agree with that. It's definitely been both for me. I definitely wanted a family, and I definitely knew that I wasn't going to be able to achieve what I wanted to create in my life if I didn't have a partner to support me and somebody to support as well. And that's one thing I can look back and say I was honestly aware of stepping into marriage, that it wasn't just my show and you were along for the ride. You weren't just playing a supporting role in this movie. We were both co-stars in this film of the Azuma family saga. And it's been beautiful. One of the things that's come up a lot, and obviously we spoke about some of the things that have helped us along that way, but competing for time, which just competing for resources in general.
Competition for resources.
The competition for resources was such a big thing that
huge.
I had my story about it. Here I am, I'm providing for this family, I'm building a business, I'm working on our future, I'm creating a life for us. There were a lot of really...
And here I am watching the kids all the time, putting my career in the back seat so that we can be... I mean, all of the different stories. Yeah. Although you've actually never had me backseat my career. I've chosen pretty much every direction I wanted to go. And as a mother... there is a lot of default for me with the kid zone for you to be able to build that kingdom. But neither are wrong, neither are right. We just both had our experiences. And I think that's like being entrepreneurs, raising children. I know our friends, Alexi, Panos and Preston Smiles, I'll also hit up against this. And we've had conversations with them about this. It's like they have 4 kids under 4. God bless their hearts. Oh, they're my heroes. But yeah, it's like when you own businesses and you're powerful leaders together, sometimes like the children are like such the joyous part and they help you grow. And sometimes it's like, whoa, like I just want to be out and be of service. And there's all these little pieces now that I have to track and be responsible for and default on. And like, now our family has COVID. Now we have to be inside. Now we can't work. Like all the different elements of like how we're trading off getting to be sovereign, expressed human beings. And yeah, it's such a little Tetris game.
So let's talk about that for a second. Let's talk about the competing for resources, because I feel like we've gotten to a really nice spot where we're really working together. You mentioned our ability to work together as a team. Now, it's not always been, I've always feel like we've been a team, but we're a much better team now than we were 7 years ago, wouldn't you say?
Oh, definitely.
So what have been like the highlights or the big moments where that changed, the things that we've learned to apply differently to be a better team?
You know, I have to say, and maybe you'll agree, that in this 7th year of our marriage, I think we're learning the most. I think we're actually seeing patterns that we have really surrounded ourselves in, that kind of almost became like the background of our reality when it comes to struggle and stress-induced productivity. So much of that I learned in my lineage of women, that like stress, coffee, all the things that rev up the nervous system is what pushes you forward into success. And I know you've had your share of just like, feeling like you're in the story of work has to be hard. It has to be hard, and it has to be some sort of toil in order for success to be at the other side. And I think there is a part of us that are moving deeper into the spirit element of our values and leaning back into trust. And not just spirit, but also trusting ourselves more, trusting our gut together.
One thing I want to just interject there is there's like a practice or something we did where we identified we got to put everything down for a second and just pause long enough and go back to the basic building blocks. Like, what actually makes us okay at a fundamental level? I know for me, it was my physicality. I need time to be physical. I need time to be in my men's circles where I get support, because I'm leading in so many other circles. Me being able to go and be on my men's team every other week in the evening times. There were some real basic ones, a few of them. And then for you, what are the things that you needed? You needed more sleep.
It was when I started like swimming. Remember, I started swimming. I started getting like a pedicure once a week. I started like, there were little things where we said, okay, that's it. We're not going to fight for resources anymore. In fact, we're going to figure out how to give each other the resources we need for our needs to be more fully met, even if it's a little harder on us in the interim to watch the kids or to like wake up earlier to let that person go to the gym, whatever it may be. We became more committed to each other's well-being than we did to the fighting for the resources. Right.
Like, we got on the same sideline. I got on your team to make your swimming happen. You got on my team to make sure that I could.
Which I have to credit Erica Vargas when she coached us, because she's an incredible coach. And she said to us, you're both at a crossroads where you guys have played this game for so long of being in survival and in this fight for resources that at some point you can do all the work you want, but what's really required is a leap of faith. Mm-hmm. Oh my God, when she said that, my whole body just like buzzed and like just aligned so hard with that, because I remember us being in that session and looking at each other and being like, oh God, she's right. Like, I haven't been trusting you. I don't trust you. I feel like I have to put my weapons up. And then at that moment, she's like, you have to both put your weapons down and go to that center of that field and start and just leap off the cliff. And Kari, you have to trust that Jetty's going to catch you. And Jetty, you have to trust that Kari's going to catch you. Yeah. I think that was actually one of the biggest turning points of our relationship.
Yeah. It was the first time that we really got on the same team about the most basic things that mattered. And it was amazing. We were super committed to it for a long stretch of time. I want to say it was for at least a few months. Something else probably came up along the way that threw us off our course. Yeah. But we've carried it forward regardless, that those most basic fundamental needs that we have, we're champions for each other's needs. Yeah. Like, I don't count on you. It's not like you can go to the gym and work out for me. Right. But the role that you play in making that a possibility, I'm out of the door at 5:30 in the morning so I can make it happen. But that means that when the kids wake up at who knows when, depending on the evening, that you've got it covered. And it took some time, but at this point, no matter, even if you got the worst night's sleep and the kids woke up a bunch of times, you never make me wrong for going to the gym, which is such a big deal for me, because, and this is on the men's side of things, maybe for the women to appreciate, and I'm sure the men can relate, that there's always a voice in my head that's saying, go help your wife, go make it easier on her. Go help her out because she's tired and she's the kids, When I know that I also need to be going and taking care of myself. So the fact that you get on my team about me taking care of myself, and that you're also been willing to deal with those hard times sometimes so that I can have that, it makes me want to rebound and show up that much more powerfully for you in your swimming or your meditation or your time going to visit your friend. And then we keep ping-ponging back and forth off of each other, and it builds this beautiful momentum.
Yeah, same. Yeah, I think there's so many times where we've tried prior to this year, I feel like, where we've tried to just like give each other some free time or whatever it may be. But it was what was behind that was like a trade-off. It was counting points. It was like, if I give you this, then I get to have that. Versus now, after we grew up a little bit and now we're like, oh wow, like I just want to see him with a full cup, because honestly, you guys, like this year we have like our health has been failing us because of that pattern. Mm-hmm. And I think that was also a big turning point. Like Jetty just having moments where he's like, I'm feeling so overwhelmed that my chest is tightening. And I was like, oh my God, like I am not committed to my husband having a heart attack at 34 because he feels so bogged down by his responsibilities to this family. And, you know, I got Hashimoto's this year with my thyroid, and I was like, wow, I'm really not committed to pushing myself so hard and saying yes to everything, so that, you know, like I can come back to get the resources I need. I need to make a stand for myself and take better care and enroll my husband in that. And I think he wanted that as well. It was sort of a wake up call for us. And yeah, and sometimes that's how the universe does it. You know, it just sends you the physical, here you go. And not to mention that this last winter we got 3 viruses in 6 weeks, which was so intense. And that was one of the biggest growth periods of our life.
So let's go into that. The last 2 months. Would you say the most challenging 2 months we've had in almost 8 years of marriage?
Oh, I don't know. I think after Sitka's birth was still probably the most challenging part of our marriage. I think because we're so much more equipped now, I feel like I have expanded into a body that can hold what we've been through. And definitely it's been like a vision quest. Like it's been like a really like, whoa. And it's more of a sense of not overwhelm this time, but more of a sense of expansion to the point of pain. I'm like, whoa, like I cannot stretch my container any further. Who's gonna catch us if we explode? But then also, I think we built in so much trust from the prayer we did in August, which we can talk more about. And the commitment to our one thing this year, which was ease and abundance, and being on that commitment together was such a huge, huge way for us to prepare what hit us this winter.
So let's go into our prayer. So in August, it was our 7-year wedding anniversary. 7 is a sacred number in the Native American Church. And in our belief system, we're participants in the Native American Church, and we really wanted to. When we got married, we were not yet involved with those ways, and so we wanted to reaffirm our vows to each other on that 7th year with our families, all of our family present, and really just take a fresh look at our relationship and our marriage. So, what was your perspective on what we committed to and how it was different than the first time we made those vows?
Yeah, it's always so beautiful renewing your vows because you really know the person this time and you know your marriage. So that was one of the hardest TP ceremonies I've ever actually sat through personally, because I felt all of the fires that we walk through in that ceremony, and all of the overwhelm and all of the toxicity of the stress that we clung on to as our tool to make it push through things. And that's when I knew I was done with that. And so that's what's been so beautiful about that prayer, is that we made this commitment that life will be more easeful, that we will take more time to be present, that we will, reject the stress and the need to control so much in order to move forward. And those can be kind of a shadow side, I feel like, of being a coach or being in the leadership world. You can really move into control in a very sly way. And I feel like there's many times where we've kind of given into that. And I think that was us really putting a stake in the ground saying, we're not going to do that anymore. And I actually think one of the most beautiful new vows that you gave me was that you were going to trust me to lead the family a little bit more and stop. There was like a declaration around, I don't need to like have to be in control of like having things go my way, or I can't remember how you said it. It was so beautiful when the vows were happening. I was crying, but that was the one that meant the most to me. And it's the one I remember the most because I was like, wow. And actually from that prayer, I have really witnessed you listening to me more, confiding in me more, and trusting me more. And I have to say, I do think it has brought us into some really cool choices and decisions. Because I do feel like the matriarch can sometimes see things on a spiritual plane that is really unique and special, you know, and not that your masculine seer isn't just as important. But, you know, I think, you know, in many indigenous communities, women lead the communities for a reason. They hold the communities. We can have this diffuse awareness and this greater periphery view of all of the things that are feeding into life. And so it's just been really beautiful to have more trust from you.
And as I reflect on that, it's really interesting because I've seen it and I've felt it, but I haven't really thought too much about to how those pieces came together. But it makes a lot of sense because I review myself and how I've shown up in our marriage up to this point, and especially up to right before that ceremony we held. And I could see over the years of where I took on more and more control and more responsibility. The time after Sitka was born, where you were in postpartum depression, and I felt like I really needed to hoist the family on my shoulders, and that you weren't really in a position to make bigger picture decisions, that I had to take that on myself. Yeah. And I got very used to that. I got very accustomed to it, to the point where I didn't really trust you to make those big decisions. And even though you found your way out of that, there was a part of that I didn't let go of because I wasn't even conscious I'd been holding on to it.
Yeah.
And in the time since the ceremony last August, I really can feel in my body what you just said, you know, trusting you more to step forward and step into your feminine role in this relationship without me trying to do all of it. And it has been beautiful. I've seen so much more of you come forth. Your creativity, your excitement is so much more online than it was before. And I mean, that's the way that I want to build a life together. You know, I want to amplify the resonance that you have from your feminine place and use my masculine skill set and abilities to make it happen. And to have that mutual respect for each other's foresight and insights is been huge. It really has, despite the fact that the past 2 months have been a whirlwind. I think the only way that we've been able to navigate it is because we've both taken turns leaning on each other.
Yes. Yes, it's so. You just said that so beautifully, and I also think one of the ways that that's happened because we've had a lot of warrior energy in our marriage from when Sitka was born. Sitka's birth was so intense; it was such a part of our myth, a huge part of our myth, like our hero's journey. His birth, his karmic birth, was just so big in our marriage and how it formed our marriage. It left an imprint on us. So there was all this warrior energy of like we have to overcome, we have to, survive. And I think there was a lot, like you said, you took on a lot of that energy to care for us, and it was necessary at the time. And it just kind of stuck, and we just sort of defaulted. And we both played into that in our own ways. And I think one of the vows that I had this time around that sort of supported you in releasing that was I was recommitting to your joy and saying, I'm going to create more spaces for you to like hang out with your friends and go do the things that you love to take care of yourself and see your light so that you can tap into receiving, because you haven't gotten to receive in so long because you've been holding that. And I recognize that in our marriage too.
Yeah. And that's the sweet place that we've gotten to now. We've made that big decision now that we're moving to Austin. Yes. And we've raised the bar in our lives to move and to relocate and to do it on a very short timeline that might not seem reasonable to other people. A lot of the
we
decisions
love challenging
that we make,
ourselves in these ways.
we throw ourselves into the fire. And sometimes I'm like, why are we doing this? And it's because we trust in something bigger than ourselves, and we trust each other. I trust you to do your part in making that happen.
Same.
And it's really beautiful that we've arrived there. So I just think about so many people who are out there in relationships because it is a challenge, right? It is a challenge raising children in this world. There's countless reasons to throw in the towel and to not be able to make it. But the practice of being in marriage, the practice of being in communication and in deeper levels of trust is really what makes it work. And it's the cliche that has so much truth in it of you really got to tend to the marriage. You can't let time go by. You can't forget to stop dating each other and really being curious about each other, because people change. We've changed. I have a different perspective on life and many things in life than I did when I asked you to marry me when I was 26.
Not to mention your new haircut. I've never seen you with short hair in our whole marriage. It's been very strange.
So there's always adjustments, and sure, and there probably are many more that we can't even anticipate. And it's the challenges that are the constant, and it's the way that we show up for them that we have influence and impact over to change.
Yeah. And I have to speak to intimacy too, because that's an interesting thing. I feel like there's so many times where we sort of, and my parents touched on this in our wedding ceremony. They talked about this. They said there's going to be times where it's not going to feel like super lovey, and you're not going to feel 100% connected, and, you're not going to have a sex drive or whatever it may be. And I've seen that happen up and down in our marriage. It's like, there's times where we're so connected and we're just so on the same plane. And there's other times where we have to trust the connection. We have to trust the connection more than we have, the ability to hold on to like the proof and the evidence of the right now where, we are okay. And just, I think we've been married long enough now, because I'm an anxious attachment style. I would say Jenny's pretty secure, but I would say we've been married long enough now to where I finally believe that if we're not 100% connected, Jenny's not going to leave me. Because there's always this little 20s something voice in me of like, okay, that's it. We're not getting along. We're not connected. He's out of here. But now I think that's another sweet spot of the 7-year point. It's like, I know that we've had enough evidence for me to know that we can move away from connection and we can move back to it. And sometimes those are scary tunnels. They're dark tunnels, but it's again, that's where our value of spirit comes in. It's like that trust. We have to just trust and hold on to the wind and know that we'll be back. We'll be back.
Yeah. And the last thing I want to say about that is that there's so much of our childhood stories and what we model and observe from our parents' relationship or the absence of their relationship that impacts the way we show up later on in our marriages. I mean, there's countless educational material out there on psychology related to this, but it's true. And the fact that we both have spent time really studying that within each other, it's that curiosity of continuously trying to dig deeper into knowing who my partner really is and not pretending like, oh, I know who she is from back when I met her. I know who I married, because you really don't. Unless you've spent years and years really digging into those depths and into those layers. I'm still finding out things about who I am. Yeah. and I anticipate that that's going to continue for both of us.
I mean, not to mention parenthood, which we could do a whole nother episode about.
Oh, yeah. And we probably should, because there's how much of the challenges that we faced off with were revealed because we became parents that maybe wouldn't have if we didn't face off
Pretty
with
much
that.
all of them, because we got pregnant right after we got married. I mean, those were, parenthood has been one of the biggest catalysts for us evolving, for sure.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's true for many.
So time flies, my love, and we're just about at the end here. Is there anything else that you want to say about relationship? Maybe a few words of wisdom to the lovers out there?
Oh, gosh. I don't know. I mean, don't ever put yourself up against another relationship, because every relationship is so unique. I feel like, it's like every relationship could have its own social security number. It's that unique. And, we choose our partners for such karmic reasons. And it's just we always have these crossroads and choices in life where it's like, we're choosing the unknown. When we choose to get married or we choose a partner, we're choosing the unknown. When we choose to be parents, we're choosing the unknown. When we choose to move somewhere new, again, choosing the unknown. And I feel that, if you're feeling hopeless or saddened or any of those things around partnership, relationship, hold steady and just knowing that it's part of like the learning curve of your life. And not everyone's meant to be in a storybook marriage. Not everybody's meant to be in a marriage. Not everyone's meant to be whatever, it's to have the perfect partnership and I think aspiring to perfection or aspiring to some sort of model is just a trap. Like stay in the unknown, build the trust with your partner and make sure they're on board for that level of building trust with you. And the learning will be rich and good.
Yeah. Yeah. And we said before that love is not enough to sustain a marriage forever. But if there is love there, then I believe that growth is possible. No matter what the outcome is, even if it's that the marriage and the relationship are no longer possible. Yeah. But as long as there is love and you love that person or there's been love there before, then there's something that both of us can get from it and create for each other. So
well said.
All right, my love. Lastly, tell people a little bit about the work that you're doing and where people can go to find you.
Yeah, well, I mean, this conversation really is what formed my work currently. Some of you might have known that I used to coach mothers after my my huge explosion of heart with what happened with my birth with Sitka. But now, after staying home for a while with my kids and really understanding the effects of this pandemic and just the expansion of what it means to be in full trust of that unknown, I've really transitioned to working with women, mothers, and women without children on the nervous system and leadership. So really, really been exploring the nervous system and how leadership as the model it's been has really overridden many women's nervous systems because it's like it can really be about kind of stepping over certain parts of ourselves and putting little tears in our soul in order to move forward. And I really want to support women in moving slower and picking up all those little pieces of their inner world so that their inner world is functioning to color and unfold their outer world and how they create visions and how they accomplish their goals and how they make, the manifestations in their heart real.
Great. So do you want to let anybody know what you've got coming up or do you want to hold on to that and just have people come contact you?
I mean, yeah, I'm doing mostly one-on-one work. My one-on-one programs right now are super rich because going into the nervous system takes a lot of time, to really rebuild that nervous system. So I am really, really amped on my one-on-one program right now. It's super delicious and intensive, I should say. But I am sneaking in a little beta program that right now it's invitation only, but I'm going to be dropping in with some work with a lot of new somatic practice, a lot of in-person stuff coming up once we get into Austin. So stay tuned. I'm going to be posting stuff on my Instagram at Kari Azuma. So if you guys want to tune in there, you'll hear all the things on the nervous system right now and on my page, just so it's fun.
Go check her out. I'm obviously biased because I'm her husband, but Kari really is. She's been doing this longer than I even knew that it existed, and she's truly a fantastic coach and a really excellent leader. So thank you for taking time to have this conversation with me today. I love you.
It's always a pleasure.
And it's always an honor to have you on here.
Love you too. Thanks, honey.